and his commander is kind of kill them all and let the devil sort them out. So but there's something that happens later on in that act that really kicks it off and kicks him more aggressively into pursuing his peaceful, if you will, way to solve problems.
That's interesting. And did you find that working within these chunks of the mini-movie act structure really helped you narrow the focus and helped you concentrate on one leg of your story at a time? Bite-sized pieces, as it were.
Right, yeah. As I said, I didn't always follow the page count, but I tried to follow the headings, like Call to Adventure for the first one. The second mini-movie, the hero is locked in, but he does something that tells the audience he's a little reluctant to really jump in there 2 feet.
Yes.
And I find the titles really help me. What's supposed to happen here or there and everywhere. And I guess there are people that don't like to follow a format like this. And I guess if you're Quentin Tarantino, you can do whatever you want. But if you're just trying to get into this, it's kind of good to have a little bit of a template to know where you're going.
And Janelle actually has a little experience with the mini-movie method. Why don't you tell us about
this to individual people, and then that kind of like clarified which were the protagonists and which was the hero. And so I hadn't come to that realization until I started putting it into this format. Now the other thing I find interesting also is that what Andrew's thing, when he went through this structure, you know, and then all the beats and things like that, if you merge the three of these, you know, you can pretty well nail it down as far as outlining your entire screenplay.
I'd say that this really helped me at the very end. Just a few days ago, I completely changed the ending of the story because I realized that I didn't have what you're supposed to have, a character arc. My character didn't really, he was kind of like James Bond. James Bond doesn't really change. He's cool all the way through. But for this kind of story, you like to see your character learn something from it, and he changed. And so I actually rewrote the last 20 or 30 pages.
Give Don a gold star, because that is one of the points that I'm going to cover later in the handout. That is one of the points about the mini-movie method.
And it speaks a little bit to Don, what you were saying. One of the things that we're struggling with the script is that there seem to be, particularly in the call to action, a number of different things that could be the call to action. And how do you what is the determining factor that makes that the one that's considered the call to action? Is there?
That is an excellent, excellent question. I think, as in life, and especially as in writing, there's probably if you can.
Sure. It's an action film, and it's interesting. Again, you talk about James Bond. It's a Jason Bourne type of movie with a former Navy SEAL who's drawn back into the fight, and he's been resisting it. And he discovers a dirty bomb and $100 million of gold bullion at the bottom of the Chesapeake Bay. And
is that in the first 10 minutes?
It's in the first 10 minutes.
Okay, then there's your call to action.
Okay, that's it right there. That's considered.
That is your call to action.
Okay.
What bigger call to action could you have? It's a dirty bomb and a fortune in gold.
Okay, got it. Okay.
That is 100% your call to action.
That's simple.
Good.
Okay.
I think so. Anyway.
You know, I'd suggest you read some of the screenplays for Jason Bourne.
Yes.
That writer, I can't remember his name, unfortunately. Boyle, was it Danny?
Robert Ludlum, the author? Or
no, not the screenplays.
Screenplays, right.
The author writes.
Tony
Tony Gilroy. He writes in such an when something exciting is going to happen, you feel it in the writing.
Okay.
But you can pull these screenplays off of
a
lot of websites.
It's also called the inciting incident,
Right.
but you have to remember that for a protagonist, it has to be, you know, yeah, we can talk about, you know, big things. So it could be a dirty bomb, or it could be, but it could also be something very small.
That's true, that's true.
That's the thing, there are a lot of small things and big things that
And
happen in that first.
no, an inciting incident is always one thing.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, we went through American Sniper,
Okay.
where the inciting incident, you know, you already had the setup. So we already knew the kind of, you know, we already had some preparation into the nature of the character beforehand. You know, the reality of the character. But the inciting incident is when his girlfriend dumps him. And then, you know, he decides, okay, you know, he's tired of being you know, a cowboy, and he's going to go and do something he decides to enlist. And so that's not a world-shaking event.
Right.
You know, girls dump guys every day.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, with what was happening then, it becomes, and the fact that it causes him to join the SEALs as opposed to any other group.
Right.
And why? And we already know why, because of the way the setup is.
Right.
And that's what has to be built
Right.
through the setup, so that the inciting incident makes logical sense. If you already got, oh wow, here's the dirty bomb, and all this guy,
Yeah.
it sounds like there's already too much there.
That's the problem, and that's one of the things I was going to say, because...
And what
I
is that
agree,
that's
I agree.
personal?
Yeah.
What is that that's personal,
Yeah.
see? No, remember, you're talking about a person.
Right.
So go back to the character and see what the inciting incident
See,
is.
that's the thing, is I think what the inciting incident then becomes is he finds out his girlfriend, who he's been asking to marry him for every day for the past year, finally says yes because she's pregnant. So that to me feels a little bit more like the inciting incident.
I would agree that that's bigger than the dirty bomb.
Yeah, because the dirty bomb, that's,
Yeah,
that's
see,
where you're right, it gets a little confusing, there's so much stuff going on.
That's much bigger than a
Yeah,
blowing up the world.
yeah.
Okay, because that's you.
It's blowing up
Okay?
his world,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
blowing up his world.
Right.
It may be a joyous blowing up, but nothing is going to be the same. Once you have a pregnancy, nothing's going to be the same, yes.
Sometimes there are two storylines going on, the big story and the small story.
Right.
And so you
Correct.
can say, in the big story, it's about the bomb. In the little story, it's about the relationship.
Right.
And those two things are juxtaposed through the whole movie.
Exactly.
You go back and forth. And so they're not necessarily one or the other. I would say both are, but they're running in those two separate storylines.
So you've got the big, or the overarching, which is like the major
Yes.
emotion, versus the mini, which would be the stories of his
The
story with
personal.
that. Okay, great.
But Andrew allowed us to dig deep, because most people would think like I did, oh, dirty bomb, there's your inciting incident. But the mini movie method is really about going deeper, because if we wanted just a story about a dirty bomb, that's not very interesting. You can just read that in the newspaper. But if you want something where it has heart and it has humor and you care about it, the girlfriend being pregnant, because if you think about it, the two tie together. Because this dirty bomb now directly affects the guy's unborn child, the future of this guy's unborn child.
Right.
Yes, Ray.
To quickly add to what Don said and started out with, James Bond is starting back in the 60s. He starts out, somebody always steals an atomic weapon. That's the plot in every single early Bond movie, right? Right, Andrew? The early ones, right? And he goes through the movie and beats the bad guy. The last two James Bond movies were Bond versus the bad guy, but in the previous one, I can't think of the name of, I mean the second, the one before the last
Casino
one.
Royale.
Yeah, Casino Royale, there's a love interest
Right.
between him and the accountant, the banker. And is she a traitor and is she not? And he tries to save her and he's pissed at the end because she betrayed him and then finds out she did. And in the last one, it was the tension, the love story between him and M. That continued throughout the whole thing, was, leading to, him losing the mother figure in somebody.
Right.
So they've changed it since, like Don said, before it was just straight action all the way through. Now you have to have that personal,
Yeah.
interest in it.
Mhm.
Makes it like-
In the
Because
back.
audiences are growing.
One thing about your particular story is you want the personal in it and you want to grab the audience. I remember back millions of years ago, when I found out I was pregnant and first had the baby, it's what kind of world am I bringing this baby into, even
Yeah.
into today, and I don't like it, but I look at the political picture. My aspect is what happens in this election is going to affect my grandchildren. What kind of world will they grow up in? And that is, in this big, the world is going to blow up dirty bomb, if you can grab inside your audience, and that's universal, well, mostly universal.
Existence. And by the end of the movie, you see that he dies. He's willing to die. Spoiler alert. He's willing to give up his life for this
Boy.
For this boy, this Hmong boy, that is being persecuted.
So the inciting incident was when he catches the boy trying to steal his car because he's being threatened by the gang.
Well, that would be the big one, but I think that the earlier one comes when his family is trying to move him into a retirement home. Because basically they're saying that he is no longer, and this is something that a lot of people struggle with today, basically they're saying that he's no longer relevant. And this is a guy that's taken charge his entire life. This is a guy that's fought wars, and suddenly he's being told he has to get a touch-tone phone with the big numbers and things like that. And also, they want to move him into some assisted living. They brought him all the brochures and things like that. So they're basically saying he's no longer relevant. And that's emotionally, that's even more important than what's going on with the boy and the Gran Torino, because they're really linked. Because his involvement with the boy and the boy's family and protecting the boy from the gang is what gives him that purpose. It's what gives him that meaning.
If you think about beat structure, we talk about it, the inciting incident is called catalyst, and it's supposed to happen on page 12 of the screenplay. And if you think about this, I noticed that if you divided a 110-page script by 8, so that would also happen like on page 13. So we're roughly in the ballpark here. So it would happen at the end of your first mini movie, theoretically. So we're roughly, so think about 12, 13 minutes into the movie is when you're going to have your inciting incident. And I don't recall Gran Torino well enough to, but it has to be an encounter with, I guess it's Cambodians or whoever they were that moved next door.
Hmong.
Right.
And Hmong, that's right. His some kind of encounter with them.
Yeah.
And he did have an encounter with them where they moved next door and they were partying and things like that. And this is just completely shaking up his world, because he's lived and he's haunted by the war and he's afraid.
Right, and he's racist, he doesn't like to change in the neighborhood, blah, blah. All right, so this is an inciting incident. His world is changing, okay? Inciting incident.
Fear.
The definition of inciting incident, you have stasis, you have stability, you have a defined world, bang, a pebble drops. The world is now out of balance, okay?
To fear. It moves from stasis to fear.
This is the big issue, and this is where we're struggling, particularly with this script right now. The second act is a real problem.
Well, is it a problem? Is it a problem because you can't figure out what the hero, or they can't figure out what the hero's plan is, or what his weakness is?
That's part of it. The fact that one of the issues that we're having with the script is that he never fails. Everything he does, he succeeds at. So there's no. This is why this is so. I'm putting big asterisks by this to talk about this with the writer, because everything he does, he succeeds at. So there's no. The tension is, and the change
Flat
back and forth
tension.
between between the fear and the hope There's no back and forth right now that's going on. It's all, okay, he does this, okay, he succeeds at it, he does that, he succeeds at it, so.
Your hero doesn't have any kind of a flaw.
He doesn't.
Not
The only flaw that he has right now that the writer thinks is that he is emotionally shut down. And
That's a big flaw.
It's a big flaw, but it doesn't change that much by the end of the problem that we're having is that there's no real arc to this. He's a very, very typical James Bond. There's no real beginning and no end to him.
That also creates a bigger problem. You raised the question, why should the audience invest in him?
Right.
And if the audience doesn't invest in him, and the audience needs to invest in him right from the get-go, and if the audience doesn't, and you know, and you can have the best looking, you know, actor in the world,
Yeah.
but if the audience doesn't invest in him right from the get-go, they're not going to follow him. If they're not going to follow him, nobody's going to come see the movie.
That's the
But
problem.
I thought you said that what motivated him was the pregnancy
You would think
of
that.
the girl.
Yeah, you would think that, but the way that it's written right now, it doesn't.
No, we
Well,
said
then-
that. He didn't write that,
I
we
agree.
said
I
that.
Even in Bourne,
Yeah.
Bourne does the art,
I
right?
know, and that's the
Bourne's
thing that's
this
so frustrating. We're trying to-
robot, and he falls for this girl,
Yeah.
and so there's the thing that he cares about is this girl that he chances upon, and they fall in love, and that's the, and
Yeah,
that's how it
except
ends.
Bourne's not a robot because
No, he's not.
Bourne's confused.
At first he was.
He doesn't know
But he
who
arcs.
he is.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
And you I have a side story. One of my closest friends is Brian Garfield, who was very close friends with Bob Ludlum. And Bob first told him the story over a poker game. And he said, that's like the best story I ever heard, you know, that's a great story. But so Bourne doesn't know who he is, and the movie, if you will, or the book, it was you know, the process of discovering who he is.
Yeah, that drives the movie, and
You
each
know,
scene
a
is
good
getting a
mi-
little bit more.
A good method of doing that is get him to a point where he is triggered to a past event. That's a really good device you can use to get him out of that platitude, that sameness. And so if you can bring him to an event that takes him to the troublesome backstory, then you can move him forward in a new perspective.
It's very interesting because it ties into his father, relationship with his father who
Perfect.
deserted him, and that's when this is great because again, these are all things we're trying to talk about with the author, but he feels that by telling us, by them saying things versus them showing them things, that their character arc is, that he's showing the character arc
Well,
is
you
there.
can show it. You don't have to say it.
Well, but that's the thing. I feel like too on the nose by saying, "Oh, I was this and now I'm that." You have to show that he's this way now. It's not just that you say that I'm that way, but how does throughout the script, how does he become that new person? And that's what we're struggling with, trying to get the author. The thing is, we're trying to get the author to hear this. He doesn't like the word character arc being said.
You should have dragged him here.
I wish I could. He's on the East Coast, but this is
Well,
what
he'll
he's
see the
so
video. See the video.
I may. He may not be happy that I'm talking about this so publicly, but.
Tell them to watch the
This
video.
would be on video.
Tell them to watch
I
the
know.
video.
You may or may not like it.
I think that in wanting the hero to be perfect,
Uncomfortable relationship with his father. You have to take that theme and then go to the kind of parent he intends to be to his child. So maybe he's trying to be perfect to win his father's love, but that's not something he can do anything about. But he can be the most loving father he can be to his child unconditionally and try to make the world survive for his child. But you've got to take the two themes and work with those if you want to bring something character-driven into it.
and getting back to the hope versus fear tension by that token.
Specifically his darkest hour.
Okay.
But this is all great, again, this is great stuff.
What does everybody think about that being the darkest hour, the darkest fear, that he's not going to be there for his family? Conflict does he have What does everybody think?
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, this is great, this is
My star
exactly-
student.
Yeah.
I'm an old English teacher. If you get back to the subject and verb, then other things can go from there. We're talking about if you contrast the relationship with his father and the relationship he plans to have, you've got the fact, let's say, and I don't know if this would fit in, that he's trying to be perfect for his father because his father never tolerated. You've got the kid who made a mistake on a math test, that the father is just abusive. He doesn't tolerate anything but perfection. So he never messes up a job because his father expects him to be perfect. The girlfriend in the process gets a sonogram and finds out the baby has a potential birth defect with his foot. Okay, do they abort the baby?
That
Or
is
do they
brilliant.
keep going? Now,